We are here because we are dedicated to helping the entire CrossFit community. Determined to elevate coaches, box owners, athletes, and everything in between, we believe that this mission will begin right here, right now. While this time and this goal begins with you, our hope is that you take this fire ignited within you and weave it into your own life with the same unrelenting passion to give those you have the privilege of coming in contact with the best hour of their day.
All right, one of our most requested, talked about guests who've been on before, and he's back. It's been a while. There's been a pandemic. There's been a few other things happening in the world, but Stu Brauer, welcome back.
Thank you, brother. How are you?
I'm great. So, yeah, like I said, we haven't talked. I mean, we've talked offline, but we've not talked on the podcast since everything went down. So talk to me about what it's been like for you.
It was like just right on St. Patrick's Day. I think it was for most people. We got the mandate in North Carolina to shut down. So we shut down, we pivot quick, we rent out equipment. I believe in 10 to 12 days, we had our remote service Movement Anywhere out there into the world. And then that was great. So we had a quick pivot. We did really well. We retained at a very, very high percentage. Very grateful for that. And then we opened up a little bit early against mandate. When the money started to run out, the PPP money was gone. We jumped the gun early. It was kind of what everybody in the fitness industry in Charlotte was doing. So we didn't catch any backlash from there. And we just been kind of trudging through just like everybody else ever since. So the gym has retained well. It's grown extremely slow. Like many other people, we had some crazy high sales months when we first reopened, but very much like the fourth quarter of any gym in the United States, November, December, January, time can get it just gets a little slow. So all that being said, it was kind of a good timing for us. We were launching our license model for Urban Movement, which came from an idea we were going to franchise it. And then with everything going on, I didn't see the price tag that would have had to be on a franchise being something the market was going to respond favorably to. So we opened a license model. We did some unique things with it that I hadn't seen anyone else do with the license thing. I started reaching out to people. I got to talk to my buddy Jason over at NC Fit, who's also, he launched one back during the what we call it, the CrossFit PR explosion of the summer of 2020, right?
That's true. We haven't spoken about that either.
Yeah. So he had very, very good timing. I brought on, I started working with Jim Crowell, who's the former CEO of OPEX, who grew their license model very successfully to almost 80 units, I believe, before he left as the CEO. So that it was a good time for the gym to kind of slow down for us because we were working on this other thing. But yeah, then since that, we just kind of watched all of it. I don't know if you saw earlier today, Google just purchased Fitbit.
No, I didn't see that.
Literally,
okay.
That's news that I think it's maybe 2 hours old. So Google's purchased Fitbit, Peloton purchased Precor. Some very cool, cool thing. Not random, but some very interesting things shaking up in the fitness space.
Precor, that brings me back to the elliptical days at the
They're
Gogo
the
gym.
largest domestic manufacturer and builder of equipment in the United States. And if anyone listening has a Peloton was designed for you to ride it one time a day, maybe 3 to 4 days a week, and then eventually one time a day, maybe once a week, and then never. It's not a commercial piece of equipment. And anyone who's had a Peloton for over 365 days, it breaks.
We've got one. We're coming up on a year. So far, so good, but
okay. It's not great hardware. It's amazing software because they're a tech company, not a hardware company. So them purchasing Precor to me that was a dumb move. It gives them domestic manufacturing, better bikes, and they'll be able to start playing in other spaces, treads, row, all the other things they make. There'll be this amazing digital integration into.
So I want to ask you, you've been outspoken about a lot of things, but I think you're outspoken about just about everything that comes up. But let's talk to me about what was going through your mind during, like you said, the PR explosion. Because you're no longer an affiliate, for the record.
Correct, but I'm still. I would still to this day. I put Greg Glassman probably in my top 5 speakers. Like I never got to see him speak publicly in person, but I would still, even to this day, I remember I was giving a keynote at a place in Seattle for a conference, and I listened to one of Greg's talks before that. He was honestly one of the first things in college when I would listen to him speak. I'd be like, oh my God. Like I would love to have his ability to do what he does on stage.
So let me interrupt. Fern's referred to him as kind of like, there's that term of like the charismatic leader. but
Yeah.
doesn't quite do everything else well. But man, he gets you fired up. And
Yeah.
I think he certainly fits that bill. Who would be your Mount Rushmore of speakers? You said top 5, but let's narrow it down to 4. Would he be on there?
If from there it goes to the stand-up comedians. I grew up on
Oh, dude,
comedy.
that's what we have in common.
Yeah, George Carlin is probably my absolute number one. I go to Eddie Murphy on top of that. The Bill Burrs and Louis C.K.'s of the world, those guys, they fall in there as well. And honestly,
you have to say them as redheads? Do you have to?
Yeah, as gingers. Yeah, I have to. It's just part of that ginger love, right? A lot of F-bombs, a lot of red hair. And then, I've been watching a lot of the interview, not public speaking, but I've actually during the pandemic, I've never been a podcast guy. Like I create mine, like you create yours, and I come on podcasts, but I'm not a consumer. During the pandemic, I became one more, and I really did. And not to jump on the bandwagon, but I really became a huge fan of the interview style of long form guys like Joe Rogan, like Guy Raz on NPR, Ferris. And so some of those, like, just that's kind of like my Mount Rushmore of like this different, candidates and categories of people who orate very efficiently.
Yeah, I think you have a couple of different categories there. You have just the great public speakers, Greg Glassman, who through, and I think any great public speaker holds your attention with some funny bits or some comedy thrown in there. But then you have the comedians who I think are underappreciated as great public speakers, and then interviewers like the Rogans. I think you'd like Malcolm Gladwell and Seth Godin.
Oh, yes. I mean, Seth is, I probably read This Is Marketing at least probably once a quarter, right? His Purple Cow, all his stuff is absolutely great.
I just listened to him on Tim Ferriss, speaking of. So I think,
did you?
Great. You can find that. It's a recent interview because he has a new book out. But I think that's probably what you and I have in common about being offended. I don't think you cannot offend me. And I say that because I grew up watching comedians, and that something all comedians say is it's not offensive if it's funny. And
100%. And how old are you, Jay?
42. So I'm a little older than you, right?
A little bit. Yeah, I'm 35. But I grew up on South Park. Like, how in the world, Beavis and Butthead, like there is when I see someone in my generation, like get offended by something someone says, I'm like, bro, come on. Man, we grew up on the most offensive stuff ever. Like Trey Parker and Matt Stone made it so that you shouldn't, The Simpsons and Family Guy. Like this was just like your childhood grow up that, should probably have put you in a pretty tough skin situation, in my opinion.
And I think just that, the late 80s and 90s when I was a, kid and teenager, it's just like you busted each other's balls, you goofed on each other. I mean, I don't know about you. I think a lot for me also was influenced by the wrestling room, where it was like, not only we would just, no one was harder on us than our teammates, physically and mentally. So it's like, you think you're going to offend me by calling me short or anything else? Like, not a chance.
No, I lived with nothing but wrestlers in my fraternity house. I was the only non-wrestler. It was like,
what
all
fraternity
wrestlers.
Were you in?
It's not a national one. It's called Ulster. It's named after Northern Providence in Ireland. It's just a small local one in this school I went to in Southeast Ohio. But it was all wrestlers and me, and I was just the strength and conditioning dude. And that was my fit, but those guys were just heinous on each other. Like the most quintessential group of guys in quote unquote locker room talk. Like if you want to categorize it like that. But yeah, and it's also we grew up in the come up of Eminem and Tom Green. This is just all the influences of my childhood that, I don't think I could get offended now either.
Yeah. And I went from the wrestling room, to the fraternity house, and you're right. It's just, I think that generation, we're like the last generation of men that will grow up going, because even now, having coached wrestling at that level and then just seeing it everything is so speaking of just so PC, and everyone gets offended at I put the term soccer mom out there, literally just asking hey, who is offended by this, and surprised that people were. And it's like, look,
by the term soccer, by the label of soccer mom.
Yeah, so there's the soccer mom class at every box or every gym, and my wife has said, I wonder if that term is. We had just a discussion. Is that term offensive? Because she's going to be a mom, and she said, I would be offended by that because the implication is, hey, you drive your kids around, and you don't work, even though that's just how you're interpreting it.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So, and again, it goes back to you can only be offended if you let it offend you.
I agree, but I also do believe, and I don't believe in stereotypes that have negative intent, hostile intent, malicious intent behind them. But a stereotype is something that you've seen on repeat that has come true historically. Like right now, it's overcast in Charlotte. I walked out this morning and I literally saw just the way the sky. I'm like, oh, today's gonna be a shit day. It's gonna be a shit day. That's a stereotype. I've had days where I've come out and it's overcast and it turns out to be beautiful. But like a stereotype. So if a soccer mom, I think that's so funny because my mom, she was the antithesis soccer mom. She showed up 3 hours late to pick me. She was a single mom picking me and my sister up from sports. But like there was the moms that they maybe didn't work. They picked the kids up from school. The husband worked. And I think that's like where that niche came in. And then we kind of use a broad stroke and we paint it to any woman who shows up in a minivan, at sporting events.
Or works out at 9 a.m.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And I grew up in a Jewish family. I mean, I still say I'm Jewish, but I don't practice. And yeah, I'm frugal. Like that stereotype fits. And it's, so yeah, you can make fun of me all you want. I'm just like, okay, that's cool. Like it doesn't, yeah. But anyway, going back to the PR explosion, what were your thoughts?
So where I started with that was, Greg being an amazing orator. He also, if you've watched any of it, watch his 60 Minutes, watch any of like the off camera stuff that has made it to the interwebs. And you'll see he's a bombastic guy. Me and him have that in common. He gives zero fucks. He's and I understand that, when the Strump, his podcast came out, he was talking a little bit more about the Me Too side of things versus the insensitive, ill-timed, more racially charged around George Floyd comments. I was more, I was one of these things where like, this is why he was never the official mouthpiece for the brand. Everyone always wanted Greg to speak more. And I think behind the scenes, and you guys would know better than I would, my guess is that was probably like, it's probably, he doesn't want to, and nor is it probably a really good idea. Like,
yeah, I would say he probably did want to, knowing him, but people that were a little, he was also intelligent enough to put people, it's like the people that use blockers on their computer so they can't get on social media. Like, I know I'm going to put something bad on there, so let me be proactive. And I mean, he would brag about having, like 40 attorneys. And I think it was, proactiveness.
So, but when that happened and it dropped, I mean, it was unfortunate. I truly think the guy has done more for in the realm of health and wellness and fitness than anybody else since Jack LaLanne. And the way I look at this is there was immediate reaction from people because just at the time, and do I put a black square up for George Floyd and, BLM and all, I think a lot of people acted emotionally, and you had a lot of gyms say they were de-affiliating, and then they had to walk it backwards when they realized, holy shit, I don't have a life vest to hold on to. If I'm not CrossFit Northeast, what the fuck am I? Like I have no identity besides this. And so I saw a lot of that, and that made me chuckle a little bit at the gym owner who was just a little too reaction based on emotion. And then I also, it kind of, my shtick. I've been talking about establishing a brand, not de-affiliating necessarily, but like having something that's your own and being able to stand on your own two legs. And I think the joke I always used, I mean, this is for years now, I would always say, hey, if Greg Glassman comes out to be the Jerry Sandusky of 2018, and then it was 2019 and if that happened, what would you do? And now all of a sudden, boom, that recall video comes out. It's like people shit the bed. They didn't know what to do. And other people rounded got the wagons together and said, hey, no, he's one guy. He doesn't represent the entire thing. They're going to take care of house internally at HQ. I'm going to just keep helping all the right people for all the right reasons. And so there's kind of those two camps. And I just kind of sat back and watched and was really proud of the gyms that stood their ground and stayed CrossFit affiliates and had, were able to separate that. I was also proud of the gyms that use this kind of as the catalyst to knock them off the fence. And they really have been wanting to pursue their own brand. And now was just a perfect timing. So I really think the only people that really lost there were the people who jumped off and then had to backpedal and send another crisis communication to their members. Okay, I know we said we were de-affiliating, but based on Eric Rosa and blah, 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 we're actually going to stay an affiliate, blah. I think that makes you look a tad bit foolish.
Yeah, I think we have the same exact stance on that. I was disappointed by the boxes that were jumping off, but still doing CrossFit. Like just removing the name CrossFit does not mean you're no longer it means you're not paying $3,000 or whatever your affiliate dues are, but we all know what you're doing.
Sure.
And, and I, like you said, I think a lot of those whether it's backpedaled or came back. And I understand that, my good friend David from South Brooklyn runs a teen program where they were like, hey, are we not welcome here because, we're color, people of color or whatever. And it's like, hey, I understand you have to take a stance. But those were the few and far in between that were doing it for the right reasons because they were trying to do right by their community. So
I agree.
What about what went on throughout the pandemic? I mean, that was obviously during it, which didn't help anything.
No, it didn't help. It, in a time where everyone was learning crisis communication for the first time, having to make public statements into membership and to the media and all that, I think it didn't help add to it. So I think 2020 is probably a big growing year. A lot of CrossFitters that never really had to practice writing crisis communication and emails and post and thinking about it and running it past. We had hired a copywriter like a year and a half ago. I was very fortunate for that at the time, someone to compose all my thoughts on BLM and George Floyd and publicly make a post about that for, all this other stuff. But I think a lot of people had a lot of practice with that in crisis communication and, kind of sitting back and then watching, 20 COVID, this isn't post-COVID world. COVID's still alive and well, and we're all still dealing with it. But then, everyone else, myself included, your gym, everyone just figuring out, okay, we training with masks on. How is this going? We got to get back to advertising. We can't just focus on, we got to get new people in. There are some people who want the fitness in person. Let's reach them. So just kind of putting on that battle. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we were just simultaneously cooking up the license model and trying to time the drop of that towards the end of 2020, which we successfully launched.
So let's talk about that. You were telling me there's kind of a few different paths that a box owner takes, and you've been in all of those positions, as have I, except for the licensing model. But I want to hear kind of what your 3 positions are and
Sure.
and pieces of advice you would give to the box owner to either avoid or purposefully make it happen.
What most micro gym owners don't hear when they're getting started with this is someone telling them dead to their face, you have 3 options to go with this in the future. Let's make it 4. The first one is you grow this thing successfully. You hire a great staff underneath you and you're a removed owner. You're around when you want to be around. You collect the money you want to collect based on the success of the business, and you're there. The caveat to that, you're only 1 or 2, maybe 3 full-time people removed from having to be back into it. And HR, for a successful business, HR is the hardest thing. Immature businesses still on their growth trajectory, sales is the hardest thing. Retention is the hardest thing. Marketing is the hardest thing. When you really talk with a successful business owner, their biggest headaches are HR based. That's it. That's the number, like keeping great people, finding people even better, whatever it may be. So there's that route, and you be the removed owner who could always have to get back into the game when the bench falls thin. Number 2 is you go ahead and you create corporately owned stores. You open up multiple locations and you hope you can replicate that magic across a territory. That's very difficult, very high risk. And number 3, you can replicate your model to a point where you don't open up any more stores. You go ahead and say, hey, I've created this name and I have this recipe, not new ingredients. There's still squats or this or that or whatever. It's just a different recipe and a completely different class experience. If you don't believe me, come and try my thing. Come down and visit. And if you're interested, if you pay me enough money, I'll let you open this in your city with a license model, not a franchise, but a license. Franchising is very expensive, very involved. Licensing is what CrossFit is. It's what Calvin Klein is. It's what Walt Disney is. License models, OPEX, NC Fit, similar. And then I mentioned a 4th one. The 4th one is you hand your business down to your kid or something. You sell it, right? You exit it in a sale, which we all know micro gyms, single location or not. It's not a seller's market. You're going to get raked over the coals if you try to sell your single location micro gym in 95% of cases, or you hand it down to your family and it becomes a family business.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about all 4 of those. That last one that you talked about selling, I get hit up probably 2 to 3 times a week because I've sold 3 affiliates and they're like, you've sold yours for this much money. Like, I got lucky, right place, right time, right buyer. And yeah, most people that are selling their box, it's their baby. And they put this I'd say this goes for any small business, really.
I would agree. Yeah. So if we can start there and work backwards on the selling it kind of scenario, the problem there and what, you either have created something so special in there that it extends beyond Jason, right? Like that's the thing is like, no one's going to buy anything where you are still the secret ingredient. Because if you remove that secret ingredient, the value proposition of the business plummets. So it's got to be something where like, I've really gifted these coaches to be the mayor of this place. You know, this business is autonomous in the fact that I can walk away from it. I don't laugh, but I always have a come to Jesus moment with somebody when someone says, I want to sell my gym. And I'm like, cool. The first question I ask, how many hours a week do you work in it? They're like 41. I'm like, okay, so if you sell to someone, you are now selling them a job.
That's what most people don't grasp. Yeah, you're buying a job.
You're like, okay, well, if you're doing 41 hours a week and you're no longer there and I buy it from you, who's going to do those 41 hours? He's like, well, you could hire somebody. Like, do you just see how that adversely changes the value proposition of this business? Because I now got to pay someone a salary to work 41 hours a week of the job. I want to see that you're handing me a turnkey business, right? So that's on the sales side. Take it down to number 3, the franchise licensing model. With franchising, you have to get franchise disclosure docs. You have all these very expensive things. We were about like almost 45% of the way through that entire process when COVID hit. And I didn't believe that the price tag I was looking, which was going to be around $250,000 to open up an urban movement. I didn't think the market would support that in a post-COVID, intra-COVID world. So we went the licensing route after talking with a lot of people smarter than me. But you have to have something that's truly unique. You mentioned earlier, I don't like the gyms that get rid of CrossFit and still do CrossFit. I am the exact same way. Having hosted enough level 1s and 2s and traveling and seeing thousands of gyms, there is no way that I would ever even think of building a business model on CrossFit in its sense. Now, we could say that everything is constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. Orange Theory. You could argue the functionality of the movements, but it's still constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. Everything in the boutique fitness space is. There's no new ingredients, only new recipes.
So,
Marcus, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. What were you going to say about Marcus?
I was saying, I interviewed Marcus the other day, and me and him were jamming, and Marcus has not done a single thing different in the terms of ingredients. Only in the recipe. He's using the same tools and same movements that you and me could totally stumble into a CrossFit gym if Jason and Stu went on a tour and find upside down kettlebell pressing and tempoed landmine squats. We could.
Absolutely.
It's his recipe for it that's unique. Just like pizza. Pizza is the same ingredients everywhere. Some ingredients are better than others, but it's preparation. Is it thick crust or thin? Is it wood fired or, nuked? Whatever it is, it's the recipes that are unique. And that's what you have to actually create. If you're in the micro gym model, you got to create a recipe that's unique, not just from a fitness prescription, but from a client experience and a delivery.
So talk to me about that. Now that you're a licensor,
yep.
What are the secret sauce things that go into urban movement to make somebody want to, because for example, we go back to number 4, hey, you want to buy my gym? And I remember having conversations with people like that were trying to sell me their gym, and I say, why would I buy your gym when I can open down the road and do the same thing?
Exactly.
So what makes you guys unique when you're doing that?
And I wonder, I think Fern stopped by. He was just in town for something. I think he just stopped in. I don't know whether he took a class or just like hung out to watch a class or something. This is like maybe relatively soon, 2 years ago. But we started with tempo training. So I looked at everything I started doing. In 2014, I started changing the way we delivered CrossFit. 2017 was the official rebrand and the dropping of the affiliate, essentially. And the thing I kept tying myself to, the speed at which we were moving, I thought was too fast. I thought it was too fast in a strength component. I thought it was too fast in a Metcon component. So I'm a huge Poliquin, Ian King fan, huge tempo training fan. Like nothing excites me more than doing a squat where I have to go down in 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and come up in 4 seconds. I get to use less weight. I get to focus more on my technique. My joints don't hurt as much. And I actually get a higher sense of hypertrophy because I'm spending more time under tension than the quick, the fast hip squats, pop the hip back down, crash the bottom, bounce up, the stretch shortening cycle on repeat over and over and over again, like we see in a fast CrossFit Metcon. So tempo training became this thing. So we started looking at King's work and Poliquin's work, and we created, based on their science, that every strength training rep should take 4 seconds, every rep. So we have different tiers. So we have our hypertrophy, muscular endurance, absolute strength, so on and so forth. And we have created various tempo protocols based on which one of those we're in. We have 3 styles of class at Urban Movement called sprints, builds, and grinds. And for my CrossFit friends, sprints would be like a Fran, builds would be like your average 20-minute Metcon, and a grind would be like Murph. So we're talking very anaerobic, a little bit more glyco, and then very oxidative on the far end.
And that's an everyday track? They do the same style of workouts daily?
Nope. So like one day will be sprint, one day will be build, one day will be grind in a completely random assortment. We release that workout prescription a week in advance. So this week, Monday's a sprint, Tuesday's a build, Thursday, whatever it may be.
But they're coming in. So someone's coming in and hitting all 3 styles.
If they show up in a given week, not in one day, they're only hitting the one.
Gotcha.
Yeah. In the one day, they're only hitting the one, whichever one we decided. And based on those 3 styles, there's various tempo prescriptions for movements. Some movements don't have tempo. A slam ball, we're not doing any tempo with, right? Now, a burpee, we actually don't do regular burpees. We only do a hand release push-up burpee. And we will crib it. I think it's absolutely insane to Scotty Too Hottie, the worm, onto the floor.
Hey, I get that reference. Most people
there we go. I knew you would, dude. I dropped that for you specifically. And hit the worm. It's like, no, if we're already on the floor and the push-up, I think I could show up in any CrossFit gym in the country and judge everyone's push-ups and find a laughable metric. Push-ups are just something I think we overlook by and large. So boom, we'll go ahead and we'll do a hand release push-up burpee with a 3-second down tempo, 2-second up tempo, right? Or something like that based on which kind of prescription we're going, whether it's hypertrophy or absolute strength, whatever it is. And then we always have an erg built into it. We have a 50% erg model. So ours is a pick a spot, and we've had pick a spot since 2019 even. This is not a COVID thing where you have an app, you pick, I'm in spot number 16, and number 16 is I'm on the bike. And then that's the erg you're on. So every workout has an erg component to it within the workout.
Every single workout.
Every workout has an erg. Every workout.
So because it's like a blend of the Orange Theory. CrossFit.
Yeah. So if you think about every time you go to Orange Theory, you're going to run and row and then hit the weight room. Very similar. Just every time you come in, you're always going to have an erg, and then you switch what erg you pick the erg. We don't care if you only. We have some people that only use the runner. Only use it. I don't care. It's not. I don't care.
Oh, so when you say erg, it's basically a monostructural piece of equipment. You're using either the
C2 bike, C2 bike, C2 rower, C2 ski erg, and then an air runner by assault.
So can you give me some example workouts? One from, would you call them sprint,
build, and grind. So here's also a great plug. Here's a plug. So we're doing a 20-day tempo training challenge. If you go to Urban Movement, over the next 20 days, we're dropping 10 tempo training workouts. And we're doing it for people in the fitness industry who have heard of Urban Movement, and they may have heard me talk about this, but they're like, what's so special? Let me try the workout. And how do we prescribe tempo? So for example, we would look at a workout like Fran, and we would do it something like this. We would do maybe a build. And in a build workout, there's an element of the workout that is going to continually build in either intensity, in repetitions, in duration. There is a ascending, we've all seen those rep schemes, 2 of this, then 4 of that, then 6 of this, then 8 of that.
Like that the open style where it's 3,
yes,
6, 9.
Yes. So we have that in every build. There's some increasing element. The tempo could increase, whatever it may be. So we would go ahead and say, all right, you're going to move for 6 minutes. You're going to rest for 1, and we're going to go ahead and do that for 4 total rounds. In that moving for 6 minutes, that interval, you're going to perform, let's call it 3 thrusters, going down in 3 seconds to the bottom of the front squat, hold for 3 seconds, come on out and hold the barbell overhead for 3 seconds. Okay. So we're getting 9 seconds a rep. All right.
It's time under tension too.
Tons of time under tension. And you're going to do 5 of those. All right. Then you're going to set the bar down. We never drop the bar from overhead. You're never, ever, ever allowed to drop a barbell from overhead or from the hip. It has to be placed back down.
What about, it happens accidentally. What do you do?
Never at my gym. You would never see it done at Urban Movement. It's actually like a thing. Like if you do, people are like, bro, what were you too weak to put your bar down? The joke is put it back where you got it, the floor. Because the thing is when we press overhead and then you drop it, bro, you just missed out 50% of the exercise. The eccentric loading, bringing that back to the shoulders is so important.
I used to have that conversation when people would argue like, hey, should I break up these cleans? And I was like, if you have to, A, you're not good enough.
Sure.
Because the best don't break them. but B, if you're always dropping the clean, you're never getting that eccentric.
Oh, you mean like doing singles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my, that's just the absolute worst. Back in the day when I was CrossFit, we experimented with it. We had how many people want more better strict pull-ups? Cool. So every time you pressed a bar overhead, it had to come back down in 4 seconds. And if everyone's visualizing this with me or do it with me, kids, press overhead. And yeah, it's up there. You go. Eccentrically loading a barbell back to your collarbone and not rebounding it. You know, where the girls have the bruised collarbones and their husbands are like, "Where do you go after school or after work to work out?"
Get those elbows up, get those shoulders there. But anyway. I want to touch on something we were saying. I think, you know, because every year, whether it's at the Open or just times where like the class is busy, you're like no dropping, but your typical CrossFit athlete has kind of been taught to drop.
Seasoned. They've been trained. Yeah.
So you've got these people that have never done that. Do you have bumper? Are you using bumper plates?
Oh yeah, we have bumper plates. Yeah.
So they could be dropped, but they've never been taught 100%. To do it. Yeah.
Yep. We train them. Well, actually, we do no maximal liftings. There's no 1RMs or anything like that in an urban movement. So anyway, so like that would, so you do the thrusters and then we'd have some tempoed pull up. Again, you guys really want to get good at pull-ups. You want, I don't care, anything in your upper body, your scaps, you want that shoulder impingement syndrome to go away. Hang out at the top of the pull-up longer. I didn't mind the butterfly pull-up when it came out, when Dutch Lowry did it back in the day with every second counts. I didn't mind it. What I didn't like is that it spent the least amount of time in the most difficult and the most important part of the pull-up, which is elbows retracted back, full scapular retraction, chin over the bar, chest to the bar. It's sped through that so that you could beat, the slap dick next to you in the workout.
By the way, you're dropping names people aren't going to recognize.
Dutch Legos, you guys go watch Savan's, one of his first CrossFit movies he ever made called Every Second Counts.
I think it's on YouTube these days.
Yeah, oh, dude, I probably watched that no less than 100 times in 2006, whatever, 2007.
Yeah.
But that's when the butterfly pull-up was invented, for all you guys who want a quick little history lesson from some of us older folks here on the podcast. But yeah, so all of our pull-ups, you'll have a tempo at the top and you'll also have upward, eccentric and concentric tempos. So you'll do 5 tempoed pull-ups as well after those 5 tempoed thrusters. And then you'd move on to an erg for about 10 or 12 calories, something like that. And you'd move for 6 minutes on that scheme. You'd rest for 1 and you'd do it again, with the goal in a build being sustainability. Since the rep scheme is getting higher and higher and higher. You can't go out the gate quick because, bro, it's about to get harder every round. The reps are going to increase. So let's say it was, 3 reps in the first round, 4 reps in the next, 5. So everyone knows how that works. So that would be an example of our version of a Fran, or how we would take your shit and convert it to mine.
So sounds like one of the things you probably have to coach the most is keeping people on the tempo. Because technically, wouldn't you say everyone should be getting about the same score?
Yeah, because there is no score. We don't measure score. Nobody even knows score is a thing. There is zero performance tracking to that degree. Twice a year, we do something called Moving Day. Moving Day is a 6-part workout, and we measure different things. That's the only time we keep score. And some members might opt their analytical. They go and they record their workout in whatever fitness app they want, but it is not a part of the culture or whatever it is. It's come in and work out. This is a pillar of your schedule. We talked about that before. And people say you start learning, because we do. The other thing is, I think you and me can both agree on this. You probably could do the same 12 exercises. Like, we could probably narrow it down to about 12 to 15 exercises that if you just did over and over and over and over again for the rest of your life, you would be insanely fit, super healthy, and probably pretty injury free, due to you'd get very versed in doing those movements perfectly. Urban movement has a pretty large equipment or movement library, but we do a lot of the same movements over and over and over again. We have 13 different versions of vertical pressing. Right? Half kneeling, upside down, strict, whatever it may be. But yeah, it's there is no score is attributed to that. And that's a really nice thing too, because for us, we want to get people in and then get them out. And I want people to then, as soon as class is over, I want them to used to high five, get their cold sweat towel, thank their coach, walk out with a big smile on their face. I want them feeling better walking out than when they walked in, but I want them to immediately be able to go to that next thing in their life. Because for our members, life continues the second class is over. We want them to have something more important in life happening next. Their new business, their new kid, their new girlfriend, they bought a car, whatever it is. They're going to watch the Cleveland Browns win the playoffs this weekend. Like whatever it may be, they have something more important. We don't want to be the most important thing in their life. We want to be just this amazing pillar of their life.
Yeah, and I recently read, I think it was on Active Life, you should leave the gym being able to do more.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah. If it's like, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to work today. But like, bro, your workout made it so you couldn't take a Zoom call. Come on now. Come on now. Like, and then here's the thing. Emptying the tank every now and then is good. That's why we have sprint days. Our sprint days are all out, very short interval, no tempo, like all out movements, but there's no movements that you're not doing deadlifts in a sprint day. You're not doing, barbell loaded squats in a sprint day or pull-ups in a sprint day. You're doing these fun metabolic movements, like I mentioned, like slam balls earlier, kettlebell swings, things you wouldn't prescribe tempo to. But pretty much 80% of our library, 85% of it is tempo based.
Yeah. And I mean, at 42, I know for me, there are days that I go into the garage. I purposely don't go to the box, try to breathe through my nose the entire workout. And that's kind of my way of self-regulating. Before this, I did Fight Gone Bad. I was mouth breathing. I was going hard. I was going all out. But yesterday I did a pretty chill workout, and I think that's one thing. For the record, I do believe CrossFit talks about it when they talk about relative intensity. I just don't think anybody grasps that and thinks I need to. We think relative intensity like an 80-year-old grandma, when really, hey, 35, 42-year-old men, you need to purposefully keep your intensity relative on specific days.
I'm going to give an analogy and hopefully let me know if you think this is relative, because I trust your opinion on this one was probably more than anybody's. If you've ever driven a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and I've driven those at a track before, you get in and they tell you like this car can go 200 miles an hour. Right now, you're going to go 57 miles an hour. Okay. Now, but I'm in a Lambo. This Lambo looks at me like the things I can do in this Lambo, I want to go do. And I think that's what CrossFit was. It was like this amazing sports car that you got in and you felt amazing. You were part of a tribe. You've got a belt now. I carry a belt to the gym. It's like I'm a WWF wrestler walking into the gym. I've got shoes now, special shoes. Like you have this entire amazing kit that makes you a fitness superhero. And then to tell people, well go 55. Like cruise, homie. Like there's could be like, no, man, I'm here for 1 hour. I got to get this. And there's this thing that you told me every once a year that's a really big deal, and people from all over the world are going to be doing it. No, I got to go fast now. And that's how I kind of viewed CrossFit. Is like, you're right, relative intensity, but it's not easy to get someone in a Lamborghini and tell them to go 55.
Yeah, I'll tell you what makes it easier: getting older.
Biology, yeah. Life happens.
And then just luckily, I think I've realized that pretty early on, but I think for most, it's either they're aging, at which point they let their ego get in the way and they stop. They're like, well, I can't do CrossFit anymore because I'm older, not realizing, no, you can. Just Mondays you go hard, or sprint days, whether it's at your box or it's Fran or a Fight Gone Bad, and or you get injured and you're like, okay, I learned my lesson. And people think it's strange that I always take 2 full rest days, like go for a walk or, go stretch or something, but choose rest before rest chooses you. I think that idea of relative intensity, Fern and I talk about it a lot. I think you and all of us are in agreement there.
100%.
People and box owners are guilty of it. I've been guilty of it. Where now,
so was I.
Similar to you, I think we have that same mentality of, we like to call it the best hour of their day. I agree. There should be better things. Like if you're truly living a good life, like your family is better than the time in the box, or you have meaningful work and that it's semantics. It's a cliche statement, but this should add value to your day.
It was to stay on this car analogy. I've never, and I know a lot of people who own Teslas, I've never heard one person brag about the Tesla with how fast it goes, but do people realize how fast Teslas actually are? They're insanely fast. No one ever talks about it. They talk about why it makes their life better. They love these different features, whether they can do it autonomously and drive whatever. Like no one ever talks about the speed of it. And I do. I think a lot of what I found, at least when I did urban movement and I was coming up with a training methodology that was birthed from my renaissance with my experience with CrossFit was I love this constantly varied functional movements, a high intensity thing. I want to take those ingredients and create my own version of my own style of pizza with this. And there will only be a small subset of people who want to taste it. Right. And those are going to be people who our number one client is someone graduating from an Orange Theory or an F45 or a Barry's, but they do not want CrossFit. That's our number one client. We don't do starter fitness. We're not taking people 40 pounds overweight. That's not our jam. And then number two, people backtracking, people in CrossFit. They were in it and either burnt out, or they were in it, but they never really got this whole like competitive thing. And they stuck around because their friend was there. But then after their friend moved to Georgia, they're like, all right, I'm canceling my gym membership. I was never really into this culty kind of thing. And I'm not into the open, but I do enjoy a barbell. I've learned to like that. Thank you, CrossFit. I like that, but I don't want it as much as how extra this is. That's our clientele. And with this, I think gyms that, going back to our original origin of this, the license model and coming up with something unique, a unique recipe, take those things. And then how much cheese, how much pepperoni, how much sauce, how would you prepare this differently for someone who's in that category? Asking Marcus, he said, he's like, I was my biggest experimenter. I didn't like come up with a program that I thought people were going to want. I just this is what made me feel good. I'm a high level 6-time games CrossFit athlete. And my body really hurt. And I was tired of competing. I was just burnt out of going a million miles an hour. And what I started doing in the gym as an own experiment became functional bodybuilding. I didn't set out to create it. And that same thing happened with me. And when I got rid of CrossFit South End, I stopped. I have not now for probably 4 years done a regular burpee, going back to my push-up burpee experiment. One day I just said, my push-ups aren't that great. They're okay. They could be better. I'm never doing another burpee. Every time I get my face down there, I am doing a controlled hand release push-up burpee. And I mean, my push-ups are probably one of the strongest things I have now. And I feel, it was just one of those little light bulb moments. And that's just one example of many. Kipping was another one. I was the biggest advocate for kipping after you have strict, and kipping with the good mechanics. I didn't like the butterfly kip for GPP. I like the C kip, the traditional C kip of old school. That's my one. I want no bend at the knees, no bend at I want a nice hollow body. And then at some point you get to it as I remember watching Donnie Forbes, actually. So you and me both, a mutual friend of ours. I watched Donnie Forbes crank out 30 strict pull-ups as fast as anybody doing a kipping pull-up.
Let's just be clear. If they know Donnie Forbes, it's very short.
It's very short arms. Okay, we're gonna give him the arms. But I was watching that. I was like, I think I would give myself more props, and I probably would like the way I looked with my shirt off, and if I could do 15 to 20 unbroken strict pull-ups. And then when I died out of those, I could resort to a really tight C kip, right? Something just, where the kip is helping me 30 to 40% at that point, versus jumping on the bar and trying to make this orbital oval as fast as I can without cracking my chin into the bubble. And that was another light bulb moment. I'm like, done it. I'm not kipping again. That's it.
I think that's a mistake a lot of CrossFitters do make once they, quote unquote, graduate or advance to a faster version of a movement. They never look back. And I think, I like that. I like everything you're saying. And, there's obviously going to be plenty of listeners who are like, this is cool. I'm taking a lot. How can I implement it? I'm going to stick with CrossFit. Well, sure. Have days where you do a strict Fran or a strict Cindy or whatever that workout is, or incorporate hand release burpees. I think that's great. I think, that's a problem, because you can lose that strength too. You can develop the strength for your strict pull-up, graduate to kipping, then butterfly. And if you're never doing the eccentric loading, like you said, you're always dropping a bar, or you never test I lost my kip for some time, and I had to go back and revisit it. And you forget, hey, this traditional kip or gymnastics kip, like you're referring to, lends itself to the muscle up, lends itself to many other movements.
And it's, I got in the CrossFit back when you had to go to a Globo gym and do it. And me CrossFitting and kipping and box jumping on a bench in between some big massive dude repping out 315. That was a spectacle And people were very curious and they'd come up and ask me, and I had this very cool moment. Well, fast forward to today, you probably get labeled if you do that, the YMCA is more of a douche than anything else. There's plenty of gyms for you to go do that shit in, man. You don't have to come here and brag with it. In retrospect, I recently went to go work out with some friends at a gym during an open gym session, and it was all CrossFit, like still current passionate CrossFitters and me. They told me what the workout was. I said, cool, I'm just going to tweak a few things, guys. Just it's, for myself. And they're like, yeah, you know what you're doing, scale accordingly. And I think they thought I was going to scale, a traditional scaling option. And I took the hang cleans, and as soon as I caught the bar, I did a 5-second descent, a fast explosion out. On the muscle ups, I did strict muscle ups on them. I lowered the reps down. And by the end of it, someone came up and goes, what workout was he doing? And they're like, oh, no, he was doing our workout. He just had done it a bunch differently. And I had 4 or 5 of their people, their members and friends coming up and be like, whoa. That was, you did those strict. I saw you going super. So why weren't you going fat? And they didn't even want to talk to the top coach who just had crushed this workout going as fast as possible. It made me feel like what I felt back in Globo Gym Day, people wanting to come up like, what is it you're doing? I'm like, I'm doing what you could be doing in your CrossFit classes. I'm just doing it based on what I want. I want isometric holds. I love a good isometric hold in multiple positions. Give me a muscle up where I get through in my chest and I stay there for 3 seconds in the catch and then dip out of it. And then a nice eccentric dip down, boom, nice false grip. Oh my God, all day, every day versus, nothing against Alex Smith, but like these Alex Smith gymnastics routines where I've got this giant kip, Anyway, that was just an interesting moment recently that I had.
And it goes back to a lot of the good from CrossFit has come from the explosion of the games. It's opened the eyes of a lot of people, but there's also that downfall. And like you said, and I'm very guilty of it to this day, I go to the box and you might tell me, hey, Jay, do it this way. But then I see Randy next to me and I want to beat him. So, I think a lot of what you're saying can and should be incorporated from the top down, but it's a matter of ego. Boxes forget, hey, it's okay to not run the clock today, or it's okay to force people to use a tempo during a workout. I think, we could take a lot from this and either incorporate it or, if certain people want to make that shift, that's great as well. But a lot of what you're saying is stuff that can and should be done regularly.
And we've been talking about this from a fitness perspective. From a business perspective, I held a conference back in October of 19, and I had about 40 gym owners come in. At this one point, we had about 100 there from all around the world. And I had them watch one of our lift and move classes with tempo training. And the number one thing is everyone goes, I can totally see how if I had this style of workout, I would close more deals, more memberships than what I have. The average CrossFit class, if I just walked in, anyone just walked into the warehouse or the doors, whatever, at any given time, it looks like uncontrolled chaos. To all of us in the know, we understand. But as a business owner, I need my prospect member who has walked in and is not yet a customer of my tribe to have a better understanding. So when you walk in even to the middle of a grind, which is our longest workout that we offer in the 3 styles, you see people who are exhausted. They're already 22 minutes into a workout. Everyone's still moving slow and steady and methodically. And a prospect can look at that and say, holy shit, you know what? I think I can do that. That doesn't look too bad. Now, in my head, I'm like, oh, lady, those people are dying in there. Trust me. But it's way less intimidating than the kid who is wielding a barbell at 100 miles an hour with some janky technique because he's, 6 into the 8 rounds of this crazy chipper workout.
Yeah, no, I think there's a tremendous amount of value there. So, but before we wrap up, I want to talk about the other, we've only managed to talk about 2, selling and the license. Let's talk about the other 2.
Corporately owned boxes, opening up your own place, especially right now, guys. I don't know how bullish you are on opening up more commercially brick and mortar based facilities. Most people are not. The commercial real estate market in the United States has not dipped at all. I'm very much in this world. I own my commercial property and we're doing other deals here in the future. And we're not seeing any dip in commercial real estate. Like some markets softened a few points, but nothing. So commercial real estate is still crazy expensive. And it's the thing that shut down most gyms. They couldn't get a break from the rent, their number one expense. So if you want to corporately own all your stores, you better have outside funding because you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. This is the mistake. You probably have seen this. CrossFit Box A is super successful. So I opened up another CrossFit Box B, but I don't have CrossFit Box B doesn't have its own money. So I rob from CrossFit Box A's financial success to pay for CrossFit Box B. That is a guaranteed way to end up on a call with me fucking 6 months later, and you're wondering how to liquidate CrossFit Box B or A because you fucked up. You never rob Peter to pay Paul.
Not only have I seen it, I've done it. Yeah. So, when we open our, and I wound up having to sell it to my partner because I was just funding it. And it's, you open Fern and
it's a separate business. It has to be treated like a new entity. It has to stand on its own legs. It can't get propped up by its big brother.
Yeah. We get questioned all the time about, or people come to us without even opening the first, hey, I want to open 5, or I want to open 3, or I want to open my second. And we're like, no.
The new client I just took on, he was about to do that. We got working together right at the right time. And one of his colleagues didn't heed the advice I gave them, and so went off and did it. And I mean, obviously the pandemic hit and he lost everything in that. And it was just really tragic and sad. So that's number 2. That's why corporate owned is difficult. It's what we call OPM, other people's money. Instead of opening up multiple urban movements, on my dime, I'm going to lease out at $12,000 a year as our license model. And we're going to lease those out, and people could have those on a 1-year membership. And that's that. So you do it on other people's money, grow the brand, just kind of like CrossFit did. And then number 1 is obviously you grow it, and then you put staff in place, amazing people. I've had my GMs going on 10 years. My other GM is going on 5 with me, but 9 in general in the industry. And they're great people. But at some point, at 10 years in, they have kids now, they have mortgages, and guess what they don't want to fucking do? They don't want to roll up the bay doors at 4:30 in the morning. That's the nature of everyone. There is an evolution of a job. But at a micro gym level, you have a ceiling. Where are they going to go beyond GM? I'll open up a second location, and they can oversee 2 locations. Great. So you gave them the same job, but just twice the risk. It's the same job. It's now you're over 2 locations, but doing the same thing. Now, are there some career GMs? I believe there are.
And that was my goal back in the day at Gold's Gym.
Yeah, to be a career GM. But I think that sounds beautiful when you're 24 and young and no kids.
It's so funny how I looked up to the GM. I was like, this dude,
I'm going to have that shit one day.
He has got it made. He's making $36,000. Yeah. He gets to work at a gym. And they were always the people that stopped working out. Like, they weren't in shape.
So now my team is, they'll eventually just be handling all of the business support of the license model. I wanted to make sure the license was different than CrossFit, different than NC Fit. So we're doing some unique things, complete geographical protection, only 1 urban movement license per city limits. So if Jason does it and you want to have it for Cleveland, Ohio, you will be the only urban movement licensee in Cleveland, Ohio. You can open up as many as you want, Jace.
But no one else can.
Correct. I will never let anyone come in and fight. That's your spot. I want to give you all the success. All the business support that we created for the franchise was just sitting there. All the PDFs, all the marketing material, all the videos, the online remote coaching app, or the online remote fitness app, what we call Movement Anywhere. It's all done. Well, you're going to get that too. Because I have it sitting there. Why not give it to them? Even though everyone, it was like, you should charge a lot more. Now, 12 grand is expensive, but you're going to, for all this stuff that you're going to have, it's not. And then also you get all the trademark stuff, all the fun legality things, so people can't steal your shit. I mean, we send cease and desist left and right to people who steal hashtag sweat local, or I've literally had people steal the logo, like the exact logo, and put like a mountain movement in Colorado with the same square and everything. We have to hit them with a C and D.
Hey, I know that guy.
Yeah.
Well, and that was kind of, what I wanted to ask. How do you, at the end of the day, like you said, it's all functional movement. Yeah. You can get away with doing CrossFit, just don't use the word Fran or Diane or whatever. Same with urban movement, right? I can get a bunch of barbells and say, hey guys, today we're doing thrusters, 4 down, pause, etc.
Sure. And it still wouldn't look like an urban movement. You guys still have a rig. We actually have a brand new, we got rid of the rig, and every pick a spot, it's an 8x6 square. Our app, you pick that spot and everything is right there in your square. We don't use 7-foot barbells, right? Like we have the 5-foot ones. We're actually working on even a different one from that. Everyone has 2 sets of gymnastics rings, a low set and a high set. Obviously allowing the high set allows you to, it's 8 feet up there. You can jump up or step up with a box for your high ring stuff. The low set, if you need to do one of our 5 pull-up modifications, or we're doing some low ring core based stuff, isometric holds or whatever it may be. You walk into an urban movement, you would never confuse it for a CrossFit. You wouldn't walk in and say, oh, this is just like a CrossFit gym. You'd walk in and say, like, I've seen this stuff, but we have CrossFitters come in that, because I have that coffee shop on site, that come in and go, what are you guys doing back there? Like, I recognize your tools, but that's not CrossFit. Like, I've lost sales. People come in, CrossFitters, try Urban. And they go, it's not for me, man. Why? It's not CrossFit enough. I'm like, cha-ching. That's when you know. So for anyone thinking about creating their own recipe, number one, if you currently have a membership base that's CrossFit, you're going to have bloodshed. You will lose people. The number one cancellation back in 2017, 40 people canceling overnight. It's not CrossFit anymore. And where did they go? They went to my friend's CrossFit gyms here in Charlotte. And that's what you need. So, like, again, you can't just throw tempo in there. It's still going to be CrossFit. You have to go through a painstaking process, because I promise, if any gym's listening to this and they instantly switch to my tempo training overnight, you'd have some pissed off customers, because that's not what you've been feeding them for years. You would have to condition them over time to understand why you're doing it. The day I said no dropping barbells, do you think I just said, hey guys, you can't drop the barbells anymore? Number one, I think it's douchey. Number two, it's too loud. Number three, I don't want to buy new equipment. No, I said we're doing a grip training cycle and an eccentric loading cycle for 12 weeks. Every deadlift, double overhand grip, no flip grip, hand release at the bottom of every rep. It's going to increase that grip strength. It's going to fix that internally rotated, externally rotated shoulder issue we see with the flip grip, right? Your barbells, you have to lower them down. Why, Stu? I want to drop it to get out, because we're doing this eccentric loading for structural scap strength. I mean, we did this for years, slowly rewiring customers, which, retraining a learned customer is one of the hardest things to do as a business.
Absolutely. And, I think what you're saying is great. It's no different than what we preach. Don't come in and you learn something and be like, we've been doing it wrong. Set them up for success, whether it's, like you said, specific programs, specific timeframes, and then eventually they learn those things.
Do you think some gym owners are afraid to change their mind because they're afraid people are going to be like, whoa, you told me one thing 6 years ago and now you're changing your mind?
Absolutely.
I think it's so silly.
Of course. I mean, I've been there, and then I realized, I don't remember what it was for the first, it was probably nutrition based or something, like, but you told us this. I'm like, yeah, and I've learned better. Like, you need to be able to say that as a box owner or coach and say, I don't think it was a mistake. That's what I believed. Now I believe this, and I want to bring you the best. And if it turns out this is wrong, or it turns out I learned something else, I'm going to change that as well. And I'm sure no different to you. You went from CrossFit to urban movement, and it would be silly to say, hey, I learned, butterfly pull-ups are actually better, but I'm not going to do it because of my ego.
Correct. That I think, and I feel like this is where I feel like a little quasi semi-fractional Glassman. So we had 40 cities apply for an urban movement license. And the thing I realized, guess what? Some of these people are going to have way better ideas as how to do tempo training than I do. And I'm so excited to see, because they're licensed, I can't tell them what to do. That's the whole rub of this whole thing. I'm super excited to see what they come up with under the model. And that's improvements to what I currently have, which I truly believe was I like to think that was Glassman's big thing. He knew he had the best ideas how to run a business or whatever. He's leaving that up to all of us to figure out. So that is something that really does excite me.
He wasn't even going to do seminars till TJ Cooper from Jacksonville, Florida reached out to him, and even the seminars themselves, at the end of the weekend, the flow master will say, hey, we've evolved from you, give us feedback. And, people listen to you, they find you on, WTF Gym Talk, they find you out there and they're like, Stu's this ginger and he, is mean and rude, but you're open-minded and no different, for anything. And you're smart. You're going to be a business owner and you're going to be an entrepreneur, and the best entrepreneurs, the best leaders listen to the people that are behind them.
And I listen, and I always duly appreciate any time you guys have me on, you and Fern. And while sometimes we have our differences of opinion, I love what you guys have been doing, and I love our conversations. I believe the differences of opinion are the only reason we have any of the cool shit in this world. One guy saw it differently than another guy, and anytime I come on here and jam with you guys, it's a huge honor, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've had people reach out to me like, how do you deal with Fern? You guys are so different. I'm like, because we're open-minded, and it's okay that somebody, there's nothing wrong with what Stu's doing, what I'm doing, what you're doing, so long as you're just open-minded. Like, I'd be great if one of your, urban movements does open in Colorado, I'm going to go over there and check it out. Like, what's the worst that happens? I get a great workout.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much, Stu, for coming on. As always, appreciate it. Best of luck with all that. People can find you out there, Google you, look you up on Instagram. I hate doing the whole where you at because
you guys know you guys know how to do it. You've got social media. You'll figure it out.
So they'll find you, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you, brother.
So you never miss an episode of the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel and on all major podcasting platforms at Best Hour of Their Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of the best hour of our day. See you next time.